The research ship Nova Reach drifted through the deep blue light of the Vexen Nebula. It was a massive alien vessel built by the Threlians, a species known for their tall, silver-skinned bodies and calm logic. Their ship was filled with humming lights, soft machines, and walls that moved like living metal. But today, peace was broken by a terrible sound that shook the entire ship. Inside the main laboratory, a baby alien dragon cried in pain and fear. Its small wings beat wildly against the glass of its containment dome. The hatchling's scales flashed with gold and red, and every time it screamed, the air shimmered with energy waves. Sparks ran across the floor as the containment system struggled to hold. The Threlians were frightened. They were scientists, not warriors, and this creature was the first of its kind ever born away from its home planet. The hatchling had been calm at first. It had hatched only 3 days ago. The Threlians had studied it with care and pride. They had named it Kira, meaning lightborn in their language. But something had gone wrong. The baby dragon's energy levels began to rise beyond safe limits. No one knew how to calm it. The higher its energy went, the more dangerous it became. The head scientist, an old Threlian named Zoril, shouted orders in a trembling voice. Stabilize the containment field. If the energy spikes again, the chamber could rupture. 2 young assistants rushed to adjust the controls. They pressed buttons with shaking hands, but the readings kept climbing. "It is not working, Chief," one of them said. "The hatchling is in distress. If this continues, it will explode from its own energy pulse." Zoril's face darkened. "We must find a way to calm it before that happens." While the alien crew panicked, down in the lower decks, a human named Riel worked in the engine bay. Riel was a mechanic assigned to maintain the life support and heating systems. He had joined the Threlian expedition 6 months ago after fixing one of their transport ships at a space station. He was simple, quiet, and not highly ranked, but he was known for his calm nature and creative thinking. The ship shook violently. Riel grabbed a rail and looked up at the ceiling. The lights flickered as power surged through the conduits. He heard the alarm echo through the ship. The system message spoke in Threlian language, but the tone was clear. Emergency. Riel wiped his hands and decided to check what was happening. He moved quickly through the corridors. Threlian workers ran past him, their silver uniforms flashing under red lights. Some carried medical tools, others containment units. Riel stopped one of them. "Hey, what is going on?" The alien spoke in a nervous tone. "The hatchling is out of control. Its energy core is unstable. If it releases another pulse, we all could be destroyed." Riel frowned. "You mean the dragon baby they were studying?" The alien nodded before running away. Riel thought for a moment, then followed the sound of the alarms. He had repaired many systems on this ship, including the lab doors, so he had access clearance. When he reached the lab, he saw a group of Threlians gathered behind a safety barrier. The dome in the center of the room glowed like a small sun. Inside, the baby dragon was curled up, its wings shaking. Its scales shifted between gold red and deep violet. Every few seconds, it let out a sharp cry that made the lights flicker. Riel stood beside a group of alien technicians. "What happened to it?" he asked. One of them looked at him in surprise. "You should not be here, human. This is a high-risk zone." Riel ignored the warning. "I can help if you tell me what went wrong." The head scientist Zoril turned toward him. "Help? You are a mechanic, not a biotechnician. The hatchling does not respond to logic or sound patterns. It rejects all our pacification methods." Riel looked at the creature. "It looks scared, not angry." Zoril frowned. "Fear or anger, the result is the same. It will destroy the chamber and itself." Riel took a slow step closer to the dome. "May I try?" The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. "What could you possibly do?" asked one. "I don't know," Riel said. "But maybe it just needs someone to show it calm, not control." Zoril hesitated. The reading showed energy spikes climbing again. They had tried everything: sound therapy, tranquilizer gas, magnetic fields. Nothing worked. Maybe letting the human try would cost nothing. "Very well," Zoril said. "You have 3 minutes." Riel nodded and stepped up to the glass. The air around the dome was hot and filled with static. He placed his hand on the surface and looked inside. The baby dragon opened its eyes. They were bright like small suns. It stared at him with confusion and pain. Riel spoke softly, though he knew the creature might not understand words. "Hey there, little one. You are safe. No one will hurt you." The hatchling growled weakly, its tail thumping against the floor. The glass vibrated under the impact. Riel didn't move back. Instead, he began tapping the glass with his fingers in a slow rhythm. The sound was gentle, steady like a heartbeat. The dragon blinked and stopped thrashing for a moment. The Threlians whispered among themselves. "What is he doing?" one asked. "Pointless noise," another muttered. Riel ignored them. He kept tapping softly, then started humming a simple tune. It was a melody from Earth, one he used to hum to his niece when she cried. His voice echoed lightly through the dome. The baby dragon tilted its head. Its eyes followed his movement. The light around its body dimmed slightly. Riel smiled. "That's it, you're doing fine." He slowly crouched so his face was level with the dome's lower edge. "You miss your mother, don't you?" he said softly. "You're alone and scared." The hatchling made a low sound that was almost like a whimper. Its wings folded halfway. Riel reached into his tool bag. He remembered something. A small bubble sprayer used to test for air leaks in the pipes. He filled it with a little cleaning solution from his kit. He shook the sprayer and pressed the button. A stream of small, clear bubbles floated into the air. The Threlians gasped in confusion. Riel smiled and kept blowing bubbles. They shimmered under the lab lights, catching reflections of the dragon's glow. The bubbles floated near the glass, spinning slowly. The baby dragon froze, staring at them. Its pupils widened as it watched the floating spheres. One bubble touched the dome and burst softly. The dragon's light dimmed again, becoming a gentle gold. Riel laughed quietly. "You like that, don't you?" The dragon tilted its head and stretched its neck toward the bubbles. It opened its mouth and made a curious chirp. Riel made another stream of bubbles, letting them drift around the dome. The baby followed them, its wings moving slowly now, no longer beating in panic. The alien stood silent, watching this strange scene. A human with a simple tool had done more in minutes than their advanced science could achieve. Zoril whispered, "Impossible." Riel looked over his shoulder and smiled. "Not impossible, just different." He kept playing with the bubbles, making small circles in the air. The hatchling finally settled on the ground. Curling up with its head resting on its tail, it watched the bubbles pop softly one by one. The air around the dome cooled down. The alarm stopped. Riel lowered the sprayer and sighed in relief. "There you go, little one. Rest now." The Threlians checked their instruments. The readings dropped back to normal. Energy output stabilized. The danger was gone. Zoril walked closer to Riel. "How did you do that?" he asked. Riel shrugged. "I just tried to make it feel safe. Sometimes when a child cries, it needs comfort, not control." The bubbles gave it something peaceful to look at. Zoril stared at the dome. "We studied its biology for months, but we never thought to treat it like a child." Riel nodded. "That's the difference. You study with your mind. I just used a little heart." The Threlians looked at him with new respect. One of the younger scientists said quietly, "Humans truly are strange creatures." The baby dragon gave a soft snore, tiny sparks dancing between its teeth. Riel smiled and sat down on the floor, leaning against a nearby wall. He was tired but peaceful. For the first time since the crisis began, the ship felt calm. As the crew restored systems to normal, Riel looked through the dome one more time. The dragon opened one eye and stared at him. Then it blew a small puff of vapor that formed tiny glowing spheres like the bubbles Riel had made. He chuckled. "You're a fast learner." The Threlians recorded the moment, marking it as an important discovery. They had witnessed something they could not explain with science. The human's actions had reached the creature in a way logic never could. Later, when the lab was secured and the energy fields reset, Zoril approached Riel again. "Human," he said, "today you saved not only the hatchling but also this ship. You have my gratitude." Riel smiled and stood. "Glad I could help. Next time it cries, just remember, less machines, more bubbles." The Threlians exchanged puzzled looks at the word bubbles, but they nodded respectfully. To them it now meant something powerful. As Riel walked out of the lab, the ship's corridors were quiet again. The stars outside shone bright through the windows. He thought about how small actions could sometimes make the biggest changes. He didn't have great strength or high knowledge like the aliens, but he had something different, a human heart that understood care. After the great crisis in the lab, the research ship Nova Reach returned to its normal rhythm. The red lights were replaced by the soft blue glow that ran across the walls. The ship's hum became steady again, and the crew finally felt safe. Yet whispers filled the corridors about what had happened in the lab. The story spread quickly. Everyone wanted to know how a human mechanic had calmed an alien dragon hatchling that even advanced Threlian science could not control. Riel became the center of quiet curiosity. He never liked attention, but now every alien he passed in the halls looked at him with awe or confusion. Some greeted him with small nods of respect, while others stared as if he were a mystery they could not solve. Riel walked to the mess hall that morning carrying his tool bag. He only wanted some tea before checking the engine systems. The mess hall was filled with Threlian crew members sitting at their strange round tables. Their food glowed faintly and their cups released small streams of vapor. The moment Riel stepped inside, all conversation paused for a few seconds. Then the whispers started again. He sighed and went to the dispenser for a drink. A young Threlian technician, her eyes bright silver, came up beside him. "Human Riel," she said. "Is it true that you calmed the hatchling with bubbles?" Riel smiled a little. "Yes, it worked somehow," the technician blinked. "Amazing. We studied the creature's emotional frequencies for days. We could not find the correct pattern." "How did you know?" Riel took his tea and sat down. "I didn't know. I just felt that it was scared, not angry. I tried to make it feel safe." The technician tilted her head. "Feel? We usually act through logic, not feelings." "That's probably why it didn't respond," Riel said gently. "Sometimes logic is not enough." The young Threlian looked thoughtful and walked away, repeating his words quietly. Riel finished his tea, then went to the lab to check on the hatchling. The guards at the entrance let him in immediately. Inside, the baby dragon rested on a warm metal platform. Its scales now glowed softly gold, no longer flashing with danger. Several Threlian scientists stood nearby taking readings and whispering to each other. When Riel entered, the hatchling lifted its head and made a small chirp. Its wings opened slightly and a few sparks of light floated around it. The alien stepped back in surprise. Zoril, the head scientist, turned toward Riel. "It recognizes you," he said in disbelief. Riel smiled. "I guess it remembers the bubbles." He took a small bubble sprayer from his tool bag and blew a few bubbles into the air. The hatchling followed them with its eyes and made a soft clicking sound that sounded like laughter. The aliens recorded every detail. Zoril said, "We have run over 50 tests since last night. The hatchling rejects all standard calming signals, but whenever you are present, its energy levels stabilize. The connection is undeniable." Riel stepped closer to the dome. "Maybe it's not about connection or science. Maybe it just trusts me." Zoril looked at him closely. "Trust, a fascinating concept. We know the word, but not the feeling. How does one earn trust from such a creature?" Riel shrugged. "By not trying to control it. By being gentle. By showing care." Zoril crossed his arms. "We study life across galaxies, yet we have never used such methods. You teach by accident, human." Riel laughed softly. "Maybe you think too big." "I just think small." The hatchling chirped again and pressed its nose against the glass. Riel crouched down to look at it. Its eyes glowed softly. "You're calmer today," he said. "That's good." One of the younger scientists came forward holding a pad. "We have observed that the creature's energy responds to emotional tone. It calms when you speak softly. Would you be willing to assist in a new experiment?" Riel looked unsure. "Experiment?" Zoril nodded. "Do not worry, it is safe. We simply want to observe your interaction with it under different conditions. It will help us understand how emotion affects its biology." Riel agreed. "All right. What do I need to do?" They prepared the lab for the test. The dome lights dimmed to simulate the dark environment of the hatchling's home world. Riel stood near the dome while the aliens watched from behind a barrier. At first, the hatchling became restless. It flapped its wings, sensing the change in lighting. The readings began to rise again. Zoril said, "Begin your interaction." Riel took out the bubble sprayer. He blew a few bubbles and began humming softly. The gentle sound filled the dark room. The bubbles reflected the faint blue light, floating slowly in the air. The hatchling's restless movement stopped. It stared at the bubbles, then at Riel. The readings on the monitors began to drop. The scientists murmured in amazement. "Energy level decreasing," one said. "Pulse rhythm stable," another reported. Zoril leaned forward. "Remarkable. This human's emotional projection appears to synchronize with the creature's biofield." Riel didn't understand their words, but he knew what he saw. The baby dragon calmed again, lying down and stretching its neck toward him. Riel smiled. Good job, little one. You're learning fast. When the test ended, the lights returned to normal. Zoril walked out from behind the barrier, his eyes wide with curiosity. Human Riel, your presence changes the hatchling's state faster than any of our devices. You must allow us to study this further. Riel looked hesitant. Study me? Zoril nodded. Yes, your emotional signals, your brain patterns, everything. Perhaps humans possess a biological frequency that influences emotional beings. Riel scratched his head. I don't know about that. I just did what felt right. Zoril smiled faintly, which was rare for his kind. That is exactly what makes this worth studying. You act from instinct, not formula. That is your gift. Later that day, Riel was invited to the observation room where they had gathered recordings of his first encounter. On the large screen, he watched himself standing before the furious hatchling, holding the sprayer and blowing bubbles. The Threlians had analyzed every detail, the angle of his movement, the pitch of his humming, the timing of his gestures. One scientist said, "Notice how the energy spikes fall the moment he begins rhythmic tapping. Then the second drop occurs when he introduces visual motion. These are non-logical calming signals." Zoril turned to Riel. "We would like you to teach us this method." Riel laughed a little. "Teach you how to blow bubbles?" The room fell silent. The aliens looked serious. Zoril said, "Yes. If it can calm a being of such power, then it must be important." "We must learn," Riel tried to explain. "It's not just the bubbles. It's what they mean. They're soft, harmless, playful. When something is scared, it needs to see that not everything around it is dangerous." The aliens recorded his words again. Zoril said thoughtfully, "So the act is symbolic. The creature sees peace and peace grows inside it." Riel nodded. "That's a good way to say it." After that day, Riel became part of the hatchling team. The Threlians created a schedule for him to visit the creature twice a day. Each time the baby dragon greeted him with excitement. It often pressed against the glass, wanting to get closer. Riel named it Sparks because of the tiny flashes that appeared when it sneezed. The aliens found the name amusing but respected it. They started using the word Sparks in their records. Days passed and the bond between Riel and Sparks grew stronger. The hatchling began to react differently to others as well. When Riel was nearby, it allowed the Threlian scientists to take readings and samples without panic. The creature's growth accelerated. It ate more, moved more, and began trying to imitate sounds. One afternoon, while Riel was cleaning his tools near the dome, Sparks made a noise that sounded like a soft hum. Riel looked up. "Are you trying to copy me?" he asked. The baby dragon tilted its head and made the sound again, slightly clearer. The Threlians gasped. "It is mimicking," one said. "The hatchling is learning human tone patterns." Riel laughed. "Smart little one." The Threlians started calling the connection the harmony effect. They believed that Riel's presence and emotional tone created a natural resonance that balanced the dragon's unstable energy core. Zoril often stood near the observation window watching them. He began to think differently about humans. Before meeting Riel, he had believed humans were weak, ruled by emotion instead of reason. But now he saw emotion not as weakness but as strength. One evening, Zoril joined Riel in the lab. "Human Riel," he said, "I wish to understand something. You said that sometimes fear needs comfort, not control. How did you learn that?" Riel thought for a moment. "From family. My sister used to raise me when our parents worked. She had a small baby girl, my niece. Whenever she cried, nothing worked, no music, no food, no toys. But when I blew bubbles, she smiled and stopped crying. I guess some things are the same no matter the species." Zoril nodded slowly. "Then emotion is not only a human thing. It is a universal connection." Riel smiled. "Maybe so." The hatchling watched them both and made a soft chirp. Zoril looked at it with warmth. "Your bubbles saved its life, Riel, and perhaps they have saved us too, from forgetting that life is not just logic." That night, the crew held a small gathering to honor Riel's contribution. They did not celebrate loudly, for the Threlians were a quiet species. Instead, they stood around him and thanked him one by one. They presented him with a new title recorded in their logbook, Caretaker of Harmony. Riel felt embarrassed but happy. I was just doing my job, he said. Zoril replied, No, you were doing what no logic could. You reminded us of what peace looks like. The Nova Reach drifted quietly through the deep space of the Vexin Nebula. Days had passed since the Great Crisis, and the baby dragon, now named Sparks, had become the heart of the ship. The crew no longer saw it as a dangerous creature, but as a precious living being. Every time it chirped or glowed, the hallways filled with warmth and curiosity. Riel's visits became part of the ship's routine. Every morning and evening he would go to the lab, clean the equipment, and spend time with Sparks. The hatchling had grown larger. Its wings were wider now, and its scales reflected colors like a living jewel. When Riel entered, the dragon would always greet him with a happy sound and flap its wings. On this day, the crew gathered around the dome as Riel arrived. Zoril and the other Threlian scientists had set up new instruments to study Sparks's reactions. They were eager to learn how emotion and calmness could influence a creature's energy core. Zoril greeted Riel. Human Riel, thank you for joining us. We have made new observations. The hatchling's energy spikes no longer appear, unless it is separated from you for more than 6 hours. It seems you have become its emotional anchor. Riel smiled. I guess I'm like its friend now. Zoril nodded. Perhaps something deeper. A guardian, maybe. Riel walked closer to the dome. Sparks was already waiting. Its eyes glowed a gentle gold, and it pressed its nose against the glass. Riel laughed softly. Hey there, Sparks. Missed me? The baby dragon chirped, and tiny sparks danced across its scales. Riel took out his small bubble sprayer and began blowing bubbles into the air. The bubbles floated and shined under the lab lights, spinning slowly like stars. Sparks followed them with delight, occasionally puffing small clouds of glowing vapor that imitated the bubbles. The aliens watched in amazement. It learns through imitation, one scientist said. It copies the human's actions as a form of bonding. Riel continued blowing bubbles, watching the creature's excitement. It's not just copying, he said. It's trying to connect. It's like when you smile at a baby and the baby smiles back. The scientist noted his words. Zoril turned to his team. We have spent centuries studying life across galaxies, yet never have we seen something so simple create such deep harmony. Perhaps emotion is a universal code we have ignored. As Riel played with Sparks, the ship's communication officer entered the lab. Chief Zoril, he said, we have received a signal from the Threlian High Council. They request an update on the hatchling's condition. Zoril nodded. Prepare the report. Inform them that the crisis is resolved, thanks to our human mechanic. The officer looked surprised. Will the council accept such an explanation? Zoril gave a calm smile. They will have to. The truth is the truth. Later that day, Riel walked through the ship's corridors. Many crew members stopped to thank him. They offered small gifts, alien fruits that glowed faintly, small silver tokens of gratitude and messages of respect. Riel felt shy about the attention but appreciated their kindness. As he passed a window, he stopped and looked out at the stars. The nebula shimmered with blue and purple light. He thought about how strange life could be. A few weeks ago, he was just a mechanic fixing pipes. Now he was part of a scientific discovery that might change how aliens saw humans. Behind him, Zoril approached quietly. You seem lost in thought, he said. Riel smiled. Just thinking how small things can change everything. Zoril nodded. Indeed, a small act can shift the path of many lives. You have done that here, Riel. Riel shook his head. I didn't do anything special. I just tried to help. To you it may seem simple, Zoril said, but to us it is something beyond science. You brought peace through emotion. That is not weakness, that is strength. They stood together watching the stars for a while. Then Zoril said, The council has requested that we bring the hatchling to the homeworld for presentation. They wish to see this bond with their own eyes. Riel frowned slightly. You mean they want to move Sparks? Yes, Zoril said. It is an honor, but also a challenge. The hatchling depends on you for calm. If separated, it could become unstable again. Riel nodded slowly. Then I'll go with it. Zoril looked surprised. You would travel to our world? It is far and strange for humans, Riel smiled. I've been surrounded by strange things since I joined this ship. One more won't hurt. The next few days were busy. The crew began preparing for travel to the Threlian home world. The dome was reinforced and the hatchling was fitted with a small portable containment field to keep it safe during flight. Sparks seemed curious about all the activity. It chirped often and followed Riel's movements through the glass. On the morning of departure, Riel stood near the containment platform while the crew made final checks. Sparks watched him closely, sensing the change. Riel placed a hand on the dome. "Don't worry, little one. We're just going for a trip." The dragon tilted its head and blew a small puff of light that touched the glass like a soft wave. Riel smiled. When the engines powered up, the ship lifted from the nebula's orbit and entered faster than light travel. The stars stretched into long silver lines outside the windows. The sudden shift made the ship hum like a heartbeat. Sparks became restless, chirping in confusion. Riel quickly took out his bubble sprayer and began blowing bubbles again. The floating spheres drifted gently through the containment field. Sparks's eyes followed them, and soon the panic passed. Its wings folded and it settled down again. The crew relaxed. Zoril said quietly, "It is clear now that your presence is essential to this journey. Without you, we might have lost control again." Riel nodded. "I'll stay close." Hours passed. The Nova Reach continued through the endless dark, glowing with silver trails. Riel stayed near the dome, talking softly to Sparks, sometimes humming the same tune that had calmed it before. The baby dragon listened, making low sounds in reply. As time went on, the bond between them deepened. Sparks began to react to Riel's emotions more clearly. When Riel was happy, the dragon's colors turned bright gold. When he felt tired or sad, its scales dimmed slightly. The Threlians recorded everything. One night, while most of the crew slept, Riel sat alone in the lab. The soft hum of the ship surrounded him. Sparks was awake, watching him with curious eyes. Riel leaned against the glass. "You know," he said quietly, "you're the first real friend I've made out here." The dragon blinked slowly, then blew a small glowing bubble from its mouth. The bubble floated through the air and burst with a tiny shimmer. Riel laughed softly. "You're getting good at that." At that moment, the ship jolted. The lights flickered. Riel stood quickly. The alarm sounded through the corridors. He ran to the communication panel. Zoril's voice came through. "Human Riel, remain in the lab. We are passing through an energy storm. Shields are unstable." Riel looked around as the ship shook again. Sparks began to cry, wings flapping against the dome. The glass vibrated under the force. "It's all right, Sparks," Riel said quickly. "Stay calm." The dragon let out a sharp cry. Energy flared around its body. The containment system struggled. Riel knew what to do. He grabbed the sprayer and started blowing bubbles as fast as he could. The spheres floated through the shaking air. He hummed the soft tune again, louder this time. The dragon froze for a moment, then focused on the bubbles. Its glow flickered and softened. The readings on the panel stabilized. The ship stopped shaking as the shields recovered. Zoril's voice came again. "Riel, report. Is the hatchling stable?" Riel looked at the calm dragon and nodded. "Stable. Bubbles saved us again." Zoril's voice sounded amazed. "Incredible. Your method works even under crisis." When the storm ended, the crew gathered to thank Riel once more. Even the high-ranking officers bowed slightly. The Threlians, who rarely showed emotion, were visibly moved. That night, the ship floated peacefully again. Riel stayed near Sparks, who had fallen asleep, its breathing soft and steady. Zoril visited him quietly. "You have done more than repair systems, Riel. You have repaired hearts." Riel smiled. "I'm just doing what feels right." Zoril nodded. "And that perhaps is what makes you truly human." The next day, the Nova Reach arrived near the Threlian homeworld. From space, the planet looked like a sea of silver clouds with rings shining around it. The city lights below glowed like stars. As the ship descended, Riel felt a strange mix of excitement and worry. He knew Sparks would have to meet the Threlian leaders. He hoped they would see the creature as a living being, not a tool. Zoril placed a hand on his shoulder. "Do not fear, Riel, the council will hear your voice. They must understand what you have shown us," Riel nodded. "Then I'll make sure they do." As the ship landed, the crew prepared for the presentation. The dome was moved carefully to the central hall of the Threlian Research Center. Dozens of alien leaders stood waiting. The hall was vast, filled with floating lights and long silver banners. When Sparks appeared, the room filled with soft murmurs. The baby dragon looked around nervously. Its glow flickered. Riel stepped forward and blew a few bubbles into the air. They floated gently, catching the light of the hall. Sparks saw them and relaxed, its scales turning bright gold. The council members watched in silence. One of them, tall and dignified, spoke. So this is the human method? Simple bubbles? Zoril stepped forward. Yes, but it is not just bubbles. It is emotion. It is kindness made visible. The human's heart reached the creature when no science could. After the presentation to the Thrilian Council, life on the Nova Reach returned to a quieter pace. Sparks had become a celebrated member of the crew. Every corner of the ship seemed brighter now, alive with curiosity and joy. The baby dragon had grown noticeably, its wings stretching wider and its scales shimmering with gold and silver hues. But even with its growth, Sparks never forgot the human who had saved it. Riel continued to visit the lab twice a day. Each time he brought his little bubble sprayer and some soft tunes from Earth. The dragon always greeted him first, chirping and blowing tiny glowing vapor puffs. The Thrilians, once skeptical of emotion and softness, now watched quietly, recording every interaction. Zoril approached Riel one morning, holding a data pad. Human Riel, we have completed our analysis of Sparks's reaction to your presence, he said. It seems the creature's emotional state is entirely linked to your actions. Not your voice alone, not your touch, but the combination of gestures, tone, and presence. Riel nodded. So you mean the dragon feels safe when I am here? Exactly, Zoril said. Your approach is simple. You do not impose logic or order. You offer calm and the hatchling responds. Riel smiled. Sometimes simplicity works better than complicated plans. The scientists were fascinated. They had spent decades developing advanced devices, measuring energy pulses and calculating emotional frequencies. Yet a human, with a few bubbles and gentle words, achieved what all their machines could not. Riel crouched next to the dome. Sparks pressed its nose against the glass. Look at you, he said softly. You've grown so much. The hatchling chirped and moved closer, wings twitching with excitement. Riel blew a few bubbles into the air. Sparks followed them, leaping slightly with each one. The room filled with the gentle shimmer of bubbles and glowing scales. One young scientist whispered to another. The human does not try to control. He simply shows care, and the dragon learns peace from that. Zoril nodded. It is a lesson we should remember. Not all power comes from calculation or force. As the days passed, the team prepared Sparks for a more important task. The Thrilian Council wanted the hatchling to be introduced to other young dragons on their home planet. This was a sensitive mission. Sparks had never been away from Riel for more than a few hours. The scientists feared separation might cause the dragon to panic. Riel stood beside Sparks as Zoril explained the plan. You will accompany it to the young dragon sanctuary on our home planet. Your presence is essential for its calm during travel. Riel nodded. I understand. I won't let it panic. The Thrilians prepared a special containment module for Sparks. The module had soft padding, gentle air circulation, and small lights to mimic the planet's sky. Riel helped adjust the system, making sure everything was comfortable. Sparks watched every motion, chirping softly as if asking questions. When it was time to move, Riel spoke gently. All right, Sparks. We're going to meet other young dragons. Don't worry. I'll be right here. The dragon tilted its head and blew a small puff of glowing vapor. Riel laughed. I know you're curious. Let's go. The crew carefully lifted the module onto the transport vehicle. Sparks pressed against the sides, its wings fluttering nervously. Riel held the bubble sprayer in one hand and spoke softly. See these bubbles? They're here to guide you, keep you calm. The bubbles floated around inside the module. Sparks followed them, watching intently. Its breathing slowed and its glow became steady. The Thrilians exchanged relieved glances. During the journey, Riel continued to hum softly. Sparks responded to his tone, chirping happily whenever he sang a gentle note. The alien scientists were amazed. They recorded the dragon's responses, studying the simple emotional bond that stabilized its energy. When they finally landed on the Thrilian home planet, the landscape was breathtaking. Rolling silver hills stretched as far as the eye could see, and rivers of liquid light reflected the pale moons in the sky. In the distance, a group of young dragons played near crystal towers. Their scales glimmered with all the colors of the nebula. Riel carried Sparks's module to a safe clearing. We're here, little one. You'll meet new friends, he said. Sparks chirped softly, wings fluttering as it looked around. The first young dragon approached cautiously. Its scales were bright blue and it studied Sparks carefully. Sparks made a soft chirp and released a small puff of glowing vapor. Riel blew bubbles toward the approaching dragon. The bubbles floated in the air, catching light and sparkling. The new dragon blinked and stepped closer, following the floating spheres. Sparks mirrored the behavior, and soon they were interacting, chasing bubbles together. Riel smiled. See? You can make friends. The scientists were amazed. The bubbles act as a universal language, one whispered. It transcends species and instinct. It is calm, playful, and safe. Riel knelt near the module. Sometimes life just needs a small gesture. A simple way to show safety and care can reach beings even more powerful than we imagine. Hours passed. Sparks continued to play with the other young dragons, learning from their movements and responding with curiosity. Riel observed quietly. He noticed how the hatchling's energy pulses remained steady, even during moments of excitement. The bubbles guided its attention and maintained calm. Zoril approached. Human Riel, your method is simple yet profound. You teach without force. You calm without commands. The creature learns trust because you show patience, not authority. Riel nodded. It's not about teaching. It's about understanding. If someone or something is scared, you just show that they are safe. The Threlian scientists studied Riel closely. They had spent centuries learning the universe, yet they had overlooked the simplest truth. Care could be stronger than science. That evening, the sun on the Threlian planet set behind silver mountains, casting long shadows across the crystal towers. Sparks rested beside Riel, glowing softly. The other young dragons slept nearby, comforted by the gentle light. Riel looked at the stars above. You see, Sparks? It's all about small things, gentle touches, soft sounds, tiny bubbles. That's enough to calm even the strongest fear. Sparks let out a soft, happy chirp, pressing its nose against Riel's hand. Riel smiled and blew a few bubbles. The bubbles floated into the twilight, reflecting light like tiny moons. Sparks's glow brightened as it watched them. Then it released its own glowing vapor bubbles. The Threlian scientists were astonished. They had recorded everything. But what they observed could not be explained fully with formulas or devices. The harmony between human and dragon transcended logic. Zoril said softly, "We have learned a secret today, one that no machine or calculation could teach us. It is not in complexity, but in simplicity. Sometimes the smallest acts hold the greatest power." Riel chuckled. "I just wanted to calm a scared hatchling. But in doing so," Zoril said, "you have shown the truth of care, understanding, and trust. That is more powerful than anything in our science." Night fell over the planet. The stars shone brighter than anywhere Riel had seen. Sparks curled beside him, its breathing even and calm. The soft glow of the young dragons around them created a serene, magical scene. Riel thought about the journey that had brought him here, from the engine bay of a research ship to the heart of a planet filled with dragons. He realized that life's simplest gestures could create extraordinary bonds, even between species as different as humans and Threlian dragons. He leaned against the module, blowing more bubbles for Sparks. The bubbles floated gently in the night air, and Sparks leaped to touch them with playful curiosity. The Threlian scientists observed quietly, learning lessons that could not be measured with instruments. The baby dragon chirped softly, its wings twitching with contentment. Riel smiled and whispered, "See? You're safe, you're calm, and you're not alone." In that moment, under the silver moons and glowing stars, Riel understood that sometimes the simplest methods were the most powerful. The heart, care, and gentle guidance of one human had changed the life of a young dragon and, perhaps, the perspective of an entire species. And as the night stretched on, the planet remained peaceful. Sparks slept beside Riel, glowing softly, surrounded by young dragons, their scales reflecting the quiet magic of simple bubbles in starlight. The secret of simplicity had been revealed, not through technology, not through formulas, but through patience, understanding, and the heart of a human. The dawn broke over the Threlian home planet, casting silver light across the rolling hills and crystal towers. Sparks, the baby dragon, had slept peacefully beside Riel all night. Its wings twitched occasionally in dream, glowing softly as though reflecting the rising sun. The other young dragons around them had also awoken, their scales shimmering in quiet anticipation. Riel stretched and rubbed his hands together. Today was an important day. The Threlian Council had arranged for Sparks to meet more elders and scientists who had never seen a dragon hatchling calm under human guidance. The young dragon chirped excitedly, pressing its nose against the glass of the containment module, sensing the excitement in the air. Riel knelt and smiled. "It's okay, Sparks. We'll meet everyone and I'll be right here. Just follow the bubbles." He took out his bubble sprayer, creating a trail of floating spheres that shimmered in the morning light. Sparks followed, hopping and leaping with delight. The other young dragons paused, watching the floating bubbles with curiosity, and some even tried to mimic Sparks, chasing them in playful motion. Zoril and the Threlian scientists walked beside Riel. "It is remarkable," Zoril said quietly. "Your method continues to calm and guide the hatchling even in new environments," Riel shrugged. "I just let it see that it's safe. The bubbles help, but the important part is that it trusts me." The hall where the council awaited was enormous, with silver arches reaching high above and crystal platforms reflecting light like stars. Many Threlian elders stood in anticipation, their faces serious but curious. Sparks peered out of the module nervously, sensing the new audience. Its wings fluttered slightly and its glow shifted between gold and soft violet. Riel knelt beside the containment module, holding the bubble sprayer high. "Look here, Sparks. Just follow the bubbles and everything will be fine," he said softly. He began blowing a stream of bubbles that floated slowly toward the center of the hall. Sparks's eyes followed them. The dragon chirped once, a happy sound that echoed softly through the hall. The elders observed quietly, unsure at first how this simple display could hold power. Then Sparks leapt gently from the module, following the bubbles into the center of the hall. Its glow brightened and the air seemed to shimmer as its energy balanced naturally. The young dragon moved confidently, circling the bubbles, chasing them, and releasing small puffs of its own glowing vapor. The Threlian scientists gasped. "It is following the human's guidance instinctively," one whispered. "No machine could have trained it so quickly." Zoril nodded. "Indeed, it is responding not to force but to care." The council leader, tall and regal, stepped forward. "So this is the human who calmed the hatchling," he said. His voice was calm but carried weight. "Explain your method. How can such a simple approach succeed where advanced science fails?" Riel smiled softly. "It's not complicated." The dragon was scared. "I didn't try to control it or force it to obey. I just showed it that it was safe. The bubbles give it something soft and gentle to focus on, and I stayed calm and patient. That's all." The leader's expression softened. "Simple yet effective. You relied on trust and care rather than devices or commands. This is wisdom beyond our usual measures." Riel nodded. "Sometimes small gestures can make the biggest difference." The elders murmured among themselves. They had always valued knowledge and calculation. Now they saw a truth that transcended numbers. Emotion, patience, and trust could shape life in ways science alone could not. Sparks began interacting with the other young dragons, teaching them playful behaviors through imitation. The bubbles floated around, guiding the group, creating a sense of harmony in motion. The elders watched, fascinated. One elder said, "It learns and teaches in harmony with the human. The bond itself stabilizes its energy and inspires others." Riel continued moving gently, blowing bubbles and humming softly. Sparks followed every gesture, glowing brighter with each chirp. The young dragons began following Sparks, forming a circle of playful light. It was a dance of trust and care, guided by simplicity rather than force. Zoril whispered to Riel, "Your presence here is essential. Without you, Sparks might still be uncertain or frightened." Riel laughed softly. "I'll stay as long as it needs me." The council leader stepped closer, observing the interaction carefully. "Perhaps humanity possesses qualities we have underestimated. You show us that intelligence is not only measured by reason but by understanding, kindness, and patience." Riel nodded. "Every being responds to care differently, but when you show that you mean no harm, even the most fearful creatures will listen." Hours passed. The young dragons explored the hall with Riel and Sparks guiding them, bubbles floating gently in the air, reflecting light and magic. Sparks chirped constantly, releasing little puffs of glowing vapor that complemented the bubbles. It was a display of energy, joy, and peace that even the scientists could not explain fully. Zoril took notes, marveling at the balance of emotion and energy. "This is more than biology or technology," he said quietly. "It is life teaching us something we cannot calculate." Riel smiled and knelt beside Sparks. "You're doing great, see? Everyone is happy now. Sparks chirped again and leapt to press its nose against Riel's hand. The baby dragon had fully accepted its human friend as its guide, protector, and companion. Its trust was complete, and its energy was stable. Later, when the council meeting ended, Riel and Sparks were invited to explore the city with the young dragons. The streets were lined with silver trees, their leaves shimmering under the sun. Children of Threlian families approached, curious to see the small dragon glowing among them. Sparks chirped happily, leaping and spinning with the bubbles floating around it. Riel walked beside it, blowing bubbles, guiding its movements. The Threlian children giggled and followed, mimicking the dragon in the bubbles. For the first time, humans and Threlians interacted freely in this playful, joyful way. One elder whispered, "The human shows us something ancient, that care, simplicity, and patience are the strongest forces in life." Zoril smiled. "Yes, we have learned more from a mechanic than from centuries of study. Perhaps we have been looking for answers in the wrong places." As the sun set over the crystal towers, Riel looked at Sparks and the young dragons playing together. He felt a deep sense of peace. The baby dragon had grown not only in size but in confidence and trust. Its energy pulses were steady, its behavior playful and curious. Most importantly, it had learned to connect with others, showing the harmony that a single human had helped create. That night, Riel returned to the containment module where Sparks slept. The baby dragon curled up beside him, glowing softly, surrounded by other young dragons who had grown comfortable in its presence. Riel leaned against the wall, blowing a few last bubbles for Sparks. The bubbles floated gently, drifting like stars. Sparks opened one eye and reached out with its small paw, touching a bubble before it popped. The soft glow reflected on its scales. Riel chuckled quietly. "See? Simple things are sometimes the most powerful." Zoril and the scientists observed quietly. "The human's method is teaching us lessons beyond science," one whispered. "Care, patience, trust, these are universal forces." Riel looked around the lab and smiled. "All I did was try to help a scared creature. But I think we all learned something today." The baby dragon sighed softly, curling into Riel's side. Its breathing was calm, steady, and peaceful. The other young dragons rested nearby, safe and happy. The lab was filled with quiet light and a sense of harmony. Riel whispered to Sparks, "You're not alone. You're never alone. Together we can face anything." Sparks made a small chirp, glowing brighter in response. Its trust in Riel, the humans, and even the Threlians had grown stronger. The baby dragon had learned not just calm, but the meaning of connection. The Threlian Council had witnessed this bond, and their perspective of humans shifted forever. They now understood that intelligence was not only measured by knowledge, technology, or control. Sometimes strength lay in gentleness, patience, and understanding. As the night deepened, the Nova Reach floated peacefully near the planet. Stars twinkled above, and the nebula in the distance cast a soft glow across the horizon. Riel sat quietly. Sparks nestled beside him, glowing softly under the starlight. The secret of harmony had been revealed. A human mechanic, a small bubble sprayer, and a scared baby dragon had shown the universe that care, simplicity, and trust could create connections stronger than any machine, formula, or device. And as Sparks drifted into sleep, dreaming of floating bubbles and glowing skies, Riel realized something profound. Life's greatest power was not in knowledge alone, but in the ability to care, to show patience, and to understand the hearts of others. For now, the galaxy could rest a little easier, knowing that even across stars and species, harmony was possible when one simple heart chose kindness.